Happy Tuesday, friends. This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. So we got through Monday. I don't know. Do y'all feel like Monday is like a terrible day? Like the whole Case of the Mondays, Office Space, obviously one of the greatest movies ever. But I don't know. I guess some Mondays I hate it. I don't know if I just had a fun weekend and didn't want it to end or whatever, or if I was seeing my son and I had to say goodbye to him, definitely. But I don't know. I don't always hate Mondays. You kind of start the week out. I guess partly for me, it's also like the mindset of where I am, and it's the fall right now, or it's almost the fall, but it's been like really gorgeous in the DMV, and it's football season, and I don't know. I'm just feeling jazzed. So anyway, Monday wasn't that bad for me, but we're in Tuesday now. And got a couple more days until Syracuse football plays Clemson on Saturday. We're going to talk a little bit of Syracuse football today, but we're going to do a lot of recruiting stuff too. I love recruiting. I have to tell you, if I could just do recruiting all the time, I would, but that would be kind of a disservice to my friends here checking out the show. But I just love recruiting stuff. It's so fun. Okay, so one of the main recruiting services, Rivals, came out with their updated 2026 player rankings on Monday. And so remember, friends, Rivals used to be Rivals, and then it merged with On Three, and then Rivals took on the recruiting high school stuff, and then On Three deals with like the college level stuff and the transfer portal. So, and full disclosure, I talked to analysts from Rivals, here and there, and quote them in articles. Not for Syracuse Central, but other places where I cover Syracuse sports. And so I like Rivals. So I'm not hating on Rivals. I just don't understand what the heck they're talking about here. So we're talking about Calvin Russell, the 5-star. Well, he's not he's a 5-star still at the 247 Sports, but he dropped from 5 stars over at the Rivals Industry Ranking, which is the composite service. And that happened because Rivals, the individual service, I hope I'm making sense with this, updated their rankings, and he's at 157. 157. And look, I use these recruiting rankings for this show and for articles, and I always say take them with a grain of salt, but I still use them, and they're somewhat subjective. They are, different people have different takes. But how can Calvin Russell be 157 overall and the number 19? The number 19 wide receiver. You're telling me there's 18 better wide receivers in the not just high school football in the 2026 class than Calvin Russell, who won a state title at Miami Northwestern Senior High School last year. Some folks, I think it was Max Preps earlier before the season started, the high school season, said he was the number 2 receiver in all of college football, and all of high school football, regardless of class designation. Number 2. And Rivals has him at 19. And I don't have his stats so far for this year, and I don't know what their season's going to end up looking like. They Miami North, their coach went back to the NFL after there was all these, allegations and blah, blah, blah about impermissible benefits, Teddy Bridgewater. And, they have an interim head coach who I believe was the junior varsity coach at Miami Northwestern. So, and I know they lost at least one game. So, I don't know if I'm sure I hope they still compete for a state title in Florida. But you're really telling me that Calvin Russell should be 157? Really? I'm trying to remember what he was at Rivals before this. He was much further down than the other places. So, it's not like he fell from 25 to 157. He was 105 or something. Don't quote me exactly, but he was in the low 100s, and he fell to 157. But okay, so let me just read these off to you and just tell me if I'm a moron. And I always want you to tell me because maybe I am. But he's 36 at the Rivals Industry Ranking, which is the Rivals composite, and he fell from 5 stars to 4. I think he was 28 there before, so he's still close to a 5-star. He's 28 at ESPN, a high 4-star. The 247 Sports composite, I feel like he used to be in the 30s. He's 51 there now, and I think that probably shifted as a result of the Rivals ranking individual dropping to 157. 247 Sports individual, he's still 5 stars, number 22 overall, number 3 wide receiver. So, he's high 4 stars most places. And then he's 5 stars at 24/7 Sports, the individual. And look, I don't want to get too hung up on this, but he's Syracuse's highest ranked commit in 8 million years. I'm joking. It's 2 decades. But I don't know. I don't understand. Look, if he's like in the top 30 everywhere and then one other place has him at like, 50 something. Okay, fine. But you're telling me every place has him at 51 or higher, most in like the late 20s to the 30s, and then one place has him at 157. Now, again, to be fair, as the other recruiting services, which is really just ESPN and 24/7 Sports, as they update their 2026 individual rankings, that maybe he drops with all them and then he drops with the composite, or maybe he does. I don't know. We'll see. And I'll talk about this stuff when the others do it as well, because it's just fascinating to me. I just don't. I'll leave it at this, and let me know again if you think I'm a complete butthead here. How can he be 22, 28, 51, 36, and then 157? That is a humongous disparity. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so we talked about Calvin, and now I'm just gonna like talk for a few minutes about just the class in general based on that Rivals update. And so on the Rivals website, they list like the team rankings, and it's based on the Rivals industry. I don't think they have team rankings based on like just Rivals. So they're 27 according to the Rivals industry ranking, as a reflection of Rivals itself updating their individual rankings. I think they're 25 at the 24/7 Sports Composite. So, again, I don't remember. ESPN, they're hovering around 25. So this class, I think, has 29 pledges now. It's hovering around the 25 to 30 range. Great. But then it Rivals. So, again, Calvin Russell's 4 stars, 157. So Rivals only has 2 of their guys as 4 stars, the individual service. Calvin Russell, and Amari Guff, though, another wide receiver, a really good wide receiver from Richmond, Virginia. But like other guys that are 4 stars elsewhere, whether it's one of the composites or 24/7 Sports or ESPN, whatever, none of those guys are 4 stars or nationally ranked by Rivals anymore. And that's 3 guys from Florida, and Russell's from Florida as well. But Jarius Rogers, who's an edge, Cameron Wilson, an edge, and Javion Cooper. Javion Cooper is an offensive tackle from Melbourne Central Catholic. Cameron Wilson's from Miami Southridge. Jarius Rogers is from Fleming Island. I hope I got that right. I didn't have notes on that, but I feel like I've written about it enough and talked about it enough that I'd get those right. But anyway, none of those guys are 4 stars according to Rivals, but they are elsewhere, whether it's ESPN or one of the composites or whatever. My point here is take it with a grain of salt. It's still a really good class. It's still trending as the best Syracuse football class since, and I've talked about this before on Syracuse Central, since like the modern era of recruiting rankings on the internet with composites and different services and blah, blah, blah. So look, I'm super happy with this class. Hopefully they hold on to some of these guys led by Calvin Russell. I don't know how much of a shot Syracuse has to flip anyone at this point. I mean, I know they were in touch with Hester from Florida and Tadarius Hughes. Hester's CJ Hester. I was about to say DJ Hester. CJ Hester. He's verbally committed to Florida. Florida is not good right now. And Hughes is verbally committed to Florida State. And Hughes plays with Russell and a couple other Syracuse targets at Miami Northwestern. I'm blanking on where Hester plays, but he plays in Florida too. And obviously, look, I've talked about this. Syracuse is just honing in on recruiting in the Sunshine State, given that it's probably the most talented state in terms of high school football in the country. Maybe we could make a case for California or Texas. I don't know. I mean, I don't have those figures, but Florida is the goods. And so Syracuse is doing well there. I think 7 of their 20, they have 29 now. Seven of them, almost a quarter, are from Florida. And again, you've got multiple guys, either high 4, Calvin Russell's 5 stars one place, high 4 stars other places. And then you've got multiple other guys from Florida, as well as Amari Guff that are 4 stars somewhere, one place or another. So it's a great class. These recruiting services will come out with more updates throughout the year, especially as the high school season wraps up. And then I don't know if they do more updates if there's like other showcases or All-American games or camps or whatever. I mean, I'll keep tabs on all that stuff. like I said, it's a great class. Calvin Russell's a great player. They got multiple other 4 stars. They're just not like consensus 4 stars. Okay. It's still way better than where Syracuse was a few years ago. It's trending up. 2027 could be dope as well and beyond. So let's just, yeah, I'll leave it at that. So I'm sure you heard that I'm just going to grab some water here. Sorry. It's hard for me to go 15 to 20 minutes without drinking water. I like to hydrate. Okay, so I'm sure you heard that on Sunday, 2 of the worst teams in college football to date in the season fired their head coaches, and one is Virginia Tech in the ACC, and the other is UCLA. And I never like wish a coach to be fired. I don't want that. But both teams were not good right now. They're not. And Deshaun Foster at UCLA, 0-3 this year, but I think he's 5-10 overall. Dating back to last year, and then Brent Pry. I was about to say Brent Key. Brent Pry. He was 0-3 this year, and they had a bad loss at home to Old Dominion over the weekend. And I think he's like, don't quote me on it, I think he's like either 16-24 or 18-24, like under 500. Let's just leave it at that in his couple years in Blacksburg. So, it sucks. It is what it is. But one thing I wanted to mention, because when this happens, when there's head coaching changes, and if you look at like the 2026 class, this is the high school senior class, there's guys verbally committed to those 2 schools. Are they going to reopen their recruitments? I mean, it's probably too early to tell. But they could. Some of them could, and some of them might see who the new head coaches are. They end up at those 2 schools and stay committed, stay locked in, or they might move on. Syracuse could get involved with some guys. There's definitely a handful of guys with each school in terms of 2026 verbal commits that held offers from Syracuse before they did their verbal commitments. The first one I'll mention, I don't know for sure right now, and I don't necessarily think Syracuse would get involved, but maybe, I'd hope, but I don't know for sure. His name is Carter Gooden. He's a 4-star edge. I think he's in the top 100 nationally, according to 24/7 Sports. He's unofficially visited Syracuse a couple times. He plays at the Tabor Academy in Massachusetts. And he's unofficially visited Syracuse a couple times, but he was supposed to visit it in like mid-June, but then it got canceled, and I think he went to Penn State instead. So I don't know right now. I'm just throwing names out. I will tell you when I have specific intel from sources. Otherwise, I might be more like prognosticating, or it's more conjecture, speculation, but just guys to maybe monitor. So I don't have any direct knowledge of Carter, but he's a guy to keep an eye on. A guy I definitely could see Syracuse going after is Xavion Cleveland. He's pledged. By the way, Gooden was pledged to UCLA. Did I mention that? Probably would be a good idea to mention that. Cleveland is verbally pledged to Virginia Tech. He's a 3-star defensive back. I think he plays corner and safety. He's nationally ranked. He's not like super highly ranked, but he's like in the top 800 or something like that, according to the composites. He plays at the Green Run High School in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which I've been to before. Virginia Beach, good stuff. He went on an official, and all these guys held Syracuse offers from Syracuse. Cleveland officially visited Syracuse I think it was in mid-June. So obviously there's some big time interest. I know some people are like, some of these kids just go on official visits just to go. I don't know. I mean, you can go on an unlimited number, just one per school in football, unless there's a head coaching change, but you can go on. But I mean, you're not going to waste. Maybe some kids will, but I don't know. My point here is I usually assume that if a kid goes on an official visit to a school, there is genuine interest on both sides, because it costs the school money to host them. And, these kids, maybe some just want a free trip, but I feel like that's a waste of their time. So Cleveland went on official. I could see Syracuse absolutely reaching out to him. A couple other guys that held offers just to keep an eye on. 2 UCLA verbal pledges. One is Micah Smith, and he plays in Florida at Vero Beach High School in Florida, and he's an interior offensive lineman, 4 stars. According to at least one recruiting service, I think a couple. He's actually, let me just look at my notes here. He's ranked as high as number 46 overall by ESPN. So he's top 50 national prospect per ESPN. So that's really high up there. And again, he held a Syracuse offer. I don't know if there's interest level there, but, I always want to keep tabs on guys that held an offer from Syracuse and, are in this situation where they might reopen their recruitment. And I will say, as I mentioned before, Syracuse coaches, Fran Brown, the GM Tommy, who's just an awesome dude. They just are crushing it in Florida. So this kid's from Florida, so it's just something to keep in mind. And then the other one, who's a UCLA verbal commit, is Marcus Almada. He's a defensive lineman, 3 stars. He's nationally ranked, not super highly, but like top 900, 950, something like that. He held an offer from Syracuse before he went to head, verbally committed to UCLA, and he plays with Carter Gooden at the DeBoer Academy. So, maybe it's something to watch, maybe not. One other guy I'll mention, and I have personal affinity just because he's from the DMV, but Adrian Hamilton is verbally committed to Virginia Tech, and he's a 3-star interior offensive lineman, and he plays at St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C. I used to live in D.C., live in Maryland now, but lived in D.C. for a long time. St. John's College High School is the same high school, this is totally random, but that Donnie Freeman, the Syracuse sophomore power forward, played at before he went to IMG for his senior year. Random. But anyway, the DMV, the Washington market and stretching into Baltimore is a key recruiting area for Syracuse. So maybe it's a guy to, keep tabs on because he held an offer. He's like a top 650 national prospect. Held an offer. And, if these guys, it's tough. When there's head coaching changes, it creates uncertainty. And these guys haven't even been, and then you think about guys that are already at Virginia Tech and UCLA, or what are they going to do? But, and then you've got verbal commits. Obviously, if they're a 2027 verbal commit or 2028, they had a long way to go in their recruiting process anyway. So, I take that, I don't worry about that as much. But 2026 they're in their senior year of high school. So, it's it could be an issue. It's like, what do you gotta if you're not staying with your school, and I would understand that based on if a new head coach comes in and that guy cleans house and assistant coaches that these guys the commits might have been tight with are gone too. Maybe they stay because they like the new head coach and the new staff, or maybe they go, and I would understand that. But you gotta scramble a little bit at least, right? If you're especially we're into the fall, it's their senior year. I mean, granted, the early signing period's December, and then the national traditional starts in February. So, I mean, they got some time, but if they're in the middle of their high school football seasons, but then they want to go on visits, I mean, it's tricky. So we'll see. We'll monitor those guys, and if I get any intel about those guys or any other UCLA or Virginia Tech verbals or that might have Syracuse interest, or certainly if there's other head coaching changes, I will stay on top of this stuff for y'all. And then we're going to finish up here just with an injury update. Injury updates from Fran Brown. He had his, Monday presser. I caught it. I didn't catch it live, but I looked at it afterwards. He didn't give super specific stuff, but it'll be interesting because the ACC this year is requiring injury updates, I believe, starting on Thursday for conference games, not non-conference. So Fran said today, he sounded optimistic about, 2 guys in particular, sophomore running back Yassine Willis, the starting running back, and offensive lineman, starting left tackle Trevion Mack, who I believe, according to Pro Football Focus, was their highest grade offensive lineman against Tennessee in their season 1 game, or week 1 game, season 1 game, knucklehead. He didn't say that they were definitely playing, but he definitely, the way he characterized it, he said something like with Willis, if everything goes right, he'll play. So, and then with Mack, he said something like, I hope he plays. He should play. I'm going to push him to play. It just depends on his body. I mean, you never know with this stuff with injuries, but certainly that would be encouraging. As I mentioned yesterday, talking about the Colgate game, again, comparing Colgate to Clemson is apples to oranges, no pun intended. But, from the running back, I think they had 173 rushing yards. I didn't think the rushing attack was amazing, but it wasn't awful. But against Clemson, it's a slight step up in opposition. I say that sarcastically. It would be nice to have Willis back. I mean, you've got other credible guys. Will Nixon, the redshirt senior, Jaden Hart, and some of the other younger guys. But against a Clemson, or just frankly against any ACC opponent, you want Willis in there, and you want. Their offensive line, as I talked about yesterday on Syracuse Central, I don't think has been amazing. I think, it's been okay in certain circumstances, but not a huge strength of the team per se. And so against Clemson, which obviously has got talented guys regardless of their record, you're going to want that offensive line to be clicking on all cylinders to make sure they have a solid run game. And then you give Steve Angeli time to throw the ball because you want to have a balanced attack. And Angeli is still working through things and is playing really well. But, sometimes he holds on to the ball too long. So you want Trevion Mack out there. So we'll see. We'll see. Like I mentioned, I think yesterday, other guys to keep an eye on and from an injury standpoint, redshirt freshman wide receiver Emmanuel Ross, sophomore running back / return man Malachi James, and then Devin Grant. He's one of the Syracuse's starting safeties, along with Deuce Chestnut and Barry Buxton III. And Brown said last week that he expected Grant to miss the Colgate game, but he was hopeful to return for against Clemson. So, we hope that Devin Grant's in there because, again, even though Clemson has not looked good, and albeit they've lost to some quality teams, ranked teams, you want your starting safety in there when you got to face Cade Klubnik. You just do. So, and then other guys, Justice Ross Simmons, the senior wide receiver, he injured his right, I think it was one of his fingers on his right hand, but it sounds like he's going to be okay. But other guys to maybe keep an eye on include right tackle Demetrius Witherspoon. I'm pretty sure, if memory serves correct, that he left the game late with an injury, and but we'll see. I don't think Brown, if I recall, he didn't address Witherspoon directly, but again, we'll just have to see how it goes with these injury things. But if you're asking me, I would definitely say, the main three guys that I got my eyes on in terms of injuries and whether they're going to play or not are Yasim Willis, Trevion Mack, and Devin Grant. And then, some others, but they need this running back room clicking. They need the offensive line to be doing as best as it can. And, Clemson can sling it. Cade Klubnik, again, they haven't been good this year, but wasn't he like a preseason All-American? I don't know if it was first team or second team, one of the teams. And I think it was the preseason All-ACC quarterback and, Heisman Trophy candidate. And, even though Clemson's 1-2, they've only lost one ACC game, and they lost by 7 points to LSU, which is now ranked number 3 at home in the week one season opener. Jeez. And they won't get dinged a lot for that, especially with the CFP selection committee, looking at strength, like who you play, who you beat, who you lose to. So, granted, they were losing to Troy at halftime and only, I think it was like 27-16. So that's their only win. But again, if you're asking me, I'd probably pick Clemson over Syracuse. I'll have, I guess, a formal projection later in the week, but they're like a 17, 18, 19 point favorite. So again, I don't think Clemson's good, but if Syracuse isn't at full strength, that certainly hurts their chances. No pun intended. So I'll keep monitoring the situation in terms of injuries. We'll see that injury report on Thursday. Hopefully, there's not a lot of guys on it. And that's gonna wrap it up for today. So tell me what you liked, didn't like. Probably definitely focus on football for the most part this week. Try and sneak in some basketball here and there. Say Tuesday. So I'll try and do a basketball one this week. It's tough though. I don't want to ignore football during football season, but I love basketball recruiting and I got so much to share. So anyway, I hope you like the show. I appreciate you tuning in. I love all the feedback, good, bad, constructive. Tell me what I stink at. I love talking about this stuff, but I want feedback. I want it to be a show that you enjoy and that I am the best I can be at. Okay? So this is Neil Adler. We're Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. I really appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate all feedback. Have a great Tuesday, friends. I will talk to you again on Wednesday. It'll be hump day. Take care.